I guess I'll go ahead and get things started, even though we, really don't have the formality of having decided officers, but we got to start somewhere, right? I thought, first, a big thank you to everyone for being willing to put your time and your intellect and your effort into this. I hope it's the beginning of some significant things. I think everyone here pretty much knows each other, although we do have a couple of people on opposite sides of the county, so I thought it would be worth just making sure everyone knows by doing a quick introduction. I think you all, I am at least one common denominator here. So you all know me, but maybe we'll go around and make sure everybody else does.
Justin Bosberg from Maxville.
Julie Lyon from Stafford.
Bryce Garner from St. John.
Todd Wyckoff from Seward.
Chad Fisher from St. John.
Clayton Gremmett from Stafford.
I had actually entertained an idea today because I thought, sometimes you can live in the same county and really at the same time not have a whole lot of occasion to talk to different people or really know each other. And I was going to do a little bit of an icebreaker, but Chad assured me that we might actually be more familiar with each other. So I'll spare you all of that tonight, but
Justin and I spoke on the phone. We've
Yeah.
seen each other at multiple meetings,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we're the opposites. So,
so with that, I thought, again, I've had varying degrees of conversation with you. The commissioners have maybe just by the nature of being on the commission, seen a little bit more of what's been going on. But I thought maybe it would be first, before we really even get into policy making, good to just take some time to review what's gotten us here and what's happened and kind of maybe what to expect for some going forward. So where I am, I've written the numbers on all of your tabs, but it's the blue tab, number 4. So just to kind of review what happened back in the past, 2014, the state passed a resolution authorizing the county to establish a Port Authority, and the county did do that in January of 2015. So for the record, those documents, both from historical 2015, but also the most recent one that the commission passed, appointing all of us as board members, are in tab 3. In 2015, we did have a company that was kicking the tires, I guess, but for a couple of reasons that didn't materialize, and without an anchor tenant, we really just let things idle. I think there's been a desire, at least on my behalf, to try to do this in a way that can, is risk mitigating, that we want to see that there's a way to pay for this as we go, as opposed to investing a lot up front without knowing whether it will materialize or not. And in the fall of 2020, an opportunity kind of presented itself to help us jumpstart that again with the funding that was available through the federal coronavirus plan. And we made the case that establishing this Port Authority, the kinds of jobs that it would create, especially in the context of our county, which relies a lot on oil, and that nature of that industry has declined, the kinds of jobs that this could create could be a part of the economic recovery of COVID. So we got $150,000, and the way that was spent, trying to think if I actually laid it out here. Maybe I didn't in this document, but what it was, $114,500 in total was spent with ASM Engineering to get construction ready documents, They are in the process right now getting full approval from BNSF, and they first submit a 30% drawing, and then once that's approved and they're really assured that BNSF is comfortable with their plan, they take it to 90%. And we're at that stage right now. BNSF had a couple of minor things, but for all practical purposes, it's been approved at the 30% level, and ASM will go ahead and take it to that next level of detail now. So that was $114,500. The other portion of it was related to legal costs, and that was to both secure options on land. You can't build something if you don't have site control, and so that was a very, important piece of this. Traditionally, you'd probably do that first and then have the engineering, but because of the constraints of the nature of funding we had, it had to be spent by December 31st. So we did both at the same time, and thank goodness it all came together. We do have those 2 signed purchase options with the Carl Dudry Trust and Larry and Leslie Tanner. So we actually got the last signature on New Year's Eve. In particular, the one with the trust took a lot of agreement of multiple parties, executors, trustees, beneficiaries being the KSU Foundation, so there's multiple partners there. And then, even just the Economic Development Board, I would say, was the fiscal agent for that grant. So the signatory on Stafford County side was Alex Fosberg as president of the Economic Development Board, but there is a provision in there for the assignment of the contract. So we will go through a process when you're ready of assigning that purchase option to the board. We paid $5,000 for each of those purchase options, and it will come off the purchase price if we were to execute those options. So there's $124,500. The remaining $25,500 was paid to Stoll, Beverland, Nicolay, and Haas. And the way that we did this was that they charged us a retainer of that full amount. And they have kept track of their billable hours, and we will be due a refund for what they don't absorb in their time. And at this point, we have, I say at this point, as of January 1, and we haven't had a whole lot of time in January. A few conversations, but not anything like it was in November and December. There's $11,015.50. And I will say there was a point in December that I wasn't sure how we would be able to, if we would be able to put it into that kind of trust account, and I really wasn't sure if it was truly a use it or lose it kind of thing. So I did also, within the legal costs, pay for website setup. So we have like 5 years of, purchase of a web domain and 5 years of hosting and some design. In fact, the logo on the front, I hired a person who does this as a gig kind of thing on the side here. And I think she'll be very responsive to us ongoing. It's Kathleen Norman, the person that works with me in economic development. But this is something in addition to her assignments there. And they paid her already out of the trust account. So that happened before December 31st. And so it's already accounted for. In the end, it probably didn't have to have been done before December 31st. But at the time, I wasn't sure if we'd have the ability to carry anything over at all. So, let's see. So, and then also the letter of intent with Wind River Grain is also something that, we spent legal time on and have that in hand. So that's not insignificant either. Those are all in tab number 1. for you, for your record. I guess maybe tab 2, as long as we're kind of going over what was accomplished with that initial amount of funding. This is, I think, layout number 8 in the end. That's in tab 2, but you know, this is the conceptual drawing. They've done much more detailed stuff that I didn't feel like we had to go through for this purpose. And they also have a final cost estimate. When they get to the 90% drawings, what they can do is take that to be verified by essentially going to bid to the dirt and rail construction contractors. So if we want them to do that here in the spring, we can, in a timeline that I think would be available to me to use in grant applications. Stop me whenever you have questions. You know, some of the things that kind of come to mind as I look at the design that kind of were the things that evolved through multiple concepts. What I kind of call the teardrop, the access point on the Tanner ground, it was kind of deliberately moved to the east as much as the curves of the railroad would allow, to try to maximize the options for developing additional businesses beyond the grain merchandising. So you might see the dotted blue line there. That could be offload for wind turbines. It would, in that concept, it would be some additional track construction, but the space is there that would accommodate it. The grain bins are on the south side. At one point they were on the west side, but one of the benefits of putting a longer access road within the, port property is that it should minimize the amount of trucks that are lined up on the, road outside. So it's designed such that, a line of trucks like they might expect to be there would not have to be out on the county road. But we are also trying to allow for, if the opportunity presents itself, to expand to the east or even the south. It is the same landowner, and the opportunity might present itself to approach them or whatever. And I think they were looking at ways that it could be added onto minimal engineering on the east.
Is it possible to have 2 tracks? Or is this is 1 track, right?
It is 1 track. It's possible.
Well, I mean, don't some of them have 2?
This accommodates 120 cars on the loop. I don't know. I couldn't speak to whether other ones are designed with 2 or what the benefit of that is or whatever. I do remember some of the discussion being around the idea of making wide, like it has access points both east and west, which is something the BNSF likes, and there can be the benefit. I almost wish one of the other engineers was the one interpreting some of this, but they want to be able to go both directions. And if the Ys were,
They want to be able to unload from both directions.
they do, and they don't want to have to go around this loop twice.
Right.
There was some discussion at one point, if you eliminated a certain feature, you might have to loop around the track a second time, and that would limit your ability to be able to get out in the 14-hour window that is where the cutoff is for the best rates. So if you looped around full a second time, it's another 4 hours or something like that. Don't quote me exactly, but I do feel like they gave some thought to making that not likely.
You know, we've had a little bit of interest from a fertilizer company for a tank, and then hopefully that rock company. Would they put that on the inside of the loop? Because I mean, like on this east side, it looks like it's just 100 foot off the property line.
Yeah. I don't know if I've got the best answer for that, whether it would go on the loop, like on the southeast corner, or if it would go in the teardrop. We did approach the trust about buying another, whatever it was. It wasn't a lot, like 200 feet or whatever to the south, and they didn't go for it. In part because if we had had the circle shifted south, it would have really limited the ability to keep farming it the way that they are right now. And the tenant is a signatory to the whole option and was less than, in general, I think is very supportive of this concept, but was not particularly enthusiastic about that particular design option because it would limit the ability to farm. So with that, it squeezed it right up to the very edge of the property to the north.
So Wind River, which is the main tenant, is okay with one track?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And
They were definitely on the call.
They pick their spot, that's where they want to be?
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, they were involved in the grain bin placement, for sure. So I don't know if there's anything else we want to cover over that. If not, I can kind of go over what I see maybe as a timeline of the coming year. Oh, this is where I noted the specific aspects of what we paid out. On tab 4. One of the other things that we did kind of knock off the list is we do have an EIN number now, so I guess able to start doing all of the legal things we might want to do in the name of the port. One of the things that I have done some spent some time on recently. I've kind of operated with this assumption that a tax increment finance district would be a practical way to pay the kinds of costs that, it's probably not that we're gonna get 100% grant funding. I mean, honestly, the only way I might see that happening is if there is a transportation bill that really does go through at the federal level and we somehow are successful in, hitting an earmark on that. But I think that is like, shooting for the fences. We can't count on that. But we can take those kinds of actions like establishing a tax increment finance district. That's within our control. As we went through some of this, John Beverlin, who was the attorney, he's from Pratt, he does the municipal work for the city of St. John. He'll be the first, I think, to tell you that he's a generalist in a lot of ways. This isn't the tax increment finance isn't necessarily the thing that he has a lot of experience in, although he was the city attorney at the point that we went through that process with the city of St. John. He did some research into it, and he raised the issue that it is a statute that is authorized for municipalities and that counties are a little bit of a different animal, and raised some caution that maybe we were going to have to do something like, I don't know, annex the city of St. John out there, or just some things that, whoa, kind of got a little daunting in concept. So I did make a call to Polsinelli, the law firm that worked with us on the grocery store TIF. I mean, they're a Kansas City-based law firm that has a specialization in development work. It is a good authority to work with. They are expensive. But I did make a call there, and they assured me that we don't have to go through that process of like annexing a town out there, that we would go through a simultaneous process where the city authorizes it at the same time that the county authorizes it. It hasn't been done a whole lot, but it can be done. And so there is a fairly simple path to it. I told them that if I wanted to be fair, but I would need to keep our engagement with them pretty limited if they were to advise us on that, and they told me that they would be willing to do that. They can give us a basic kind of a checklist, and I think, again, since we've been through this before, we've got kind of a set of instructions. I think we can work through it without an attorney necessarily being present during the, hearings and meetings and billing for all of those hours and so forth. But if they said that they could, one, provide a checklist, and two, that they'd be flexible with the billing, that if we needed to push it into the future, we could do that. Now, we do have some funding. I just want to be cautious about not blowing it all. So, I haven't committed to anything. It's, we're now kind of at a point where we can discuss some of those things and make a, give me some guidance. But, so the TIF process, it takes about 3 months to go through the process of, first you have to establish a TIF district, and you adopt a resolution. Basically, you have to make the choice as a city or county first. You have to publish it, give notice of hearing, receive public comment, have the hearing, and then adopt it. So you do that first for the TIF district. And then secondly, there's a second process that's the same thing of having, a resolution, receiving comment on it, public hearing, and final passage on a particular plan for that district. So it's a two-step process. And I think we need to plan for about a 3-month period to fully complete that with each the city and the county. I'm kind of skipping over tonight's meeting as something in our timeline, but I think we will, though, as that process starts, want to consider having another meeting to, basically start that TIF process. I don't have that on the agenda tonight. One of the things that I've had some conversations with KDOT recently about what their grant opportunities are. And one of the things that's going to be a specific requirement, particularly, well, actually both of the rail and the economic development. So there's 3 pots of funding at KDOT that could potentially, this project could potentially qualify for. One is the rail program, pretty self-explanatory, but it's the smallest of all of the pots at KDOT. But this clearly fits within there. They typically have at least twice as many requests for funding as they have dollars. I mean, they have twice as many dollars worth of requests as they have funding for it. And it's about an $11 million program. And then they have an economic development program. So since this is so clearly tied to job creation, it could easily qualify for that. The person who oversees that program was a part of the video call that we had, and I have the application form for that. And I think it makes sense to apply for that at the same time. That's on a rolling basis. The rail program has a specific deadline for application once a year, which is March 31st. Economic development program has a rolling deadline, so we can kind of apply for both at the same time, and it might be the case that they figure out a way to provide for this out of more than one bucket. There's also the multimodal program. It is the biggest pot of money, but it's also where you're competing against highway projects, which probably take priority, so it's probably not the pot to focus on the most. But each of these are going to require a cost-benefit analysis. So they want to see, it's actually statutory in the economic development program, and there has to be at least a 1-to-1 cost-benefit analysis, or cost-benefit. And so I'm going to need a little time to put that together, and I'll probably need to work with someone at a university to make sure. I mean, I'm a trained economist, but I'm not sure I'm truly qualified to put together what they expect, So I'll probably need to find someone that's willing to help put that together.
So how much is possible through the economic program?
Well, I don't remember if they told me what that pot has in it for sure. Either way, I don't think we can expect to get full funding for this out of any of KDOT's programs. $20 million for the EcoVivo program, according to my notes. I don't know. I think something maybe in the 40 to 50% request category is realistic. 50% might even be on the more aggressive side, but for that one, for just KDOT. And it might be that something that we, kind of like the grocery store, we cobble together some other things as well. But that's where I would target my request to KDOT, is somewhere 40, maybe even 50. They also have some zero interest loan programs, is my understanding. And
Through the state?
through the state, which again isn't going to fund all of our, even the part that we have to. I think someone told me about a project that's somewhat similar to ours. They got 40% grant, 20% loan from KDOT, which was a 0% loan, and then 40% was the local entity's responsibility. And they could either fund it or borrow it, but it was on them, is how that scenario worked. It was a project in Wichita area.
Now, KDOT, I'm not aware, are they the Kansas Department of Transportation? Is that who we're talking about?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Sorry, I should have not
That's the
thrown the
KDOT I know.
acronyms out
But I
there,
was just
but
making
yes,
sure.
that's true.
Okay.
How long are those interest-free loans for?
I don't know for certain.
Want to get fixed.
30-year fixed.
10 years or 50?
Yeah, there's the one that we're doing with the grocery, and I've looked into this too. Maybe I have it at the bottom with the rolling deadline stuff, but there is a program through USDA. It's administered through the rural cooperatives, rural utility cooperatives, not grain. But it is also an option for a zero interest loan. The thing is, it has a 10-year payback, which, zero interest, even at low interest rates, helps quite a bit. But a 10-year payback on a capital investment can, if it doesn't have a lot of margin in it to begin with, 10 years, in my experience with the grocery store, becomes a difficult payback. Nonetheless, it's zero interest loan, so it's worth maybe taking a look at.
Yeah.
But, so, and I think I mentioned that ASM will be at that stage of sending out their drawings for earthwork and rail contractors to validate pricing. So that should happen here in the next month. Kind of looking toward prepping for KDOT grant. That program opens, he gave me a clear date. They open the program on March 31st. And that deadline is, isn't it? Yeah, end of April. They have 2 months, knowing exactly what their parameters are to fill it out. The commission meeting on Wednesday last week, there was some discussion about maybe seeing if a tour of the Port of Catoosa would be an option for us. I did reach out to the port director by email last Thursday and wrote a fairly long email, was hoping I'd hear back by today. I didn't. It does say on their website that while they normally, I think they normally like welcome tours of school groups and leadership groups and what have you, and that they aren't doing them right now. I did pose the question to him in this email, among other things, whether a group of 7 might be able to come taking precautions like appropriate distancing and masking and so forth, and I just haven't heard. But I had an opportunity I was a part of a freight advisory committee to KDOT, looking back to the time we were first doing this, 2014 to 16, and had the opportunity to go down there with that group. And I think you'll be inspired if you see it. I mean, they'll even say, I know they're outside Tulsa, there's differences. We will not probably grow to the way that they have, but they'll also say, when they first started this 50 years ago, that it was a vacant farm field. And,
How many tenants do they have?
oh, I wonder if I can
They
even pull
got
stuff up.
large
Their
traffic.
website,
They just got
They got it all.
a lot.
even our farming tenant on the Dudley land related that when he was first starting farming, that they drove to Catoosa at that point to deliver grain, and that it was basically an open pit, just, conveying onto barges, and that they would just continuously dump rain or shine in this open pit. It was memorable to him, and he's part of why I think he was very open to being supportive of this project. But I suppose I'm website when my computer gets warmed up here.
I'd be in favor of going.
What's that?
Yeah.
I'd like to go.
Yeah, for sure. And if they won't let us go, we could talk to Wind River and go to Garden City and at least look at theirs up close.
Yeah.
If Port Catoosa won't let us.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to go somewhere and see one actually built and operating. Carolyn, on this drawing, they're showing 4 bins here. How big are those bins? Do you know roughly?
Yes.
I'm trying to wrap my mind around how big it'd be, I guess. It says 300 foot wide. It looks like they could be 100 foot across, maybe.
Okay, 3 550,000 bushel concrete bins.
3 550.
2 100,000 bushel steel bins. 5,000 square foot office. 2 11 by 80 foot plate form scales with thoughts of adding another 1.2 bunker. Would that be 1.2 million bushel? So, yeah, for what it's worth, their version of setup is much more modest than 2 other grain companies that have knocked on the door here before. But they're figuring out a way to make it happen. I don't know. I mean, instead of 25 million, that makes it harder to find a payback on, they're doing 11 to 17 with the idea that they can, expand as time goes on. That's the way they've expressed it to me. He said, so I asked him for this breakdown so that I could provide it to our county appraiser and get an estimate of what the value of the TIF will be. And Carl has it. We actually talked today, and I don't have the estimate yet, but it's something he's working on. And so, yeah, the Wind River said that they do have a more detailed breakdown of shuttle loading machinery, but didn't know how much info we needed. And so,
I was gonna ask you, is the port gonna provide that, or
report,
gonna provide
which
their own
which report?
engine to run this?
Oh,
Or does
no.
the port?
The port. No, Wind River is responsible for building all of the improvements that are required to get in, to do their business. They're responsible for building them, paying for it, operating it. We're just providing land and track.
Will the access road be ours too?
Yes, I think so. I think
So their contribution is just being here with their vendors.
yeah.
Okay. And paying taxes.
And paying taxes,
Yeah, I mean, their incentive is that we're building it. They're not gonna get like a neighborhood revitalization or a big tax break from us, because we're gonna need the TIF money
Right.
to service our,
Pay for this.
yeah.
And then theoretically, by us owning it, we have the opportunity to offer that access to other businesses as well. So, I don't know if this helps, I don't mean to like, I don't know. Not everybody really is very familiar with the Port Authority concept in this part of the world, so I don't mean to be like, assuming that you don't, but sometimes I get questions about what is that idea of a Port Authority? And they say, think of it like an airport. We're not an ocean port. I mean, that's maybe what people think of when they hear Port Authority. We're not an ocean port, but this is probably more like an airport where not every airplane that lands on the runway has an ownership of the runway. They're paying fees to access it. And it would, you know, that's how we can manage this, such that, you know, the first business is helping us pay for the infrastructure, but we have the infrastructure there on an ongoing basis that we can lease access to multiple tenants. So we do have kind of an open, you know, a blank slate on how we want to exactly structure those leases and management agreements, which to me would be a benefit of being able to go to the Port of Catoosa, because they have something more like that than even Wind River does. I think Wind River would say we kind of operate like a port, but not because that's how they're structured. It's just they've chosen to give other companies access to their track or their, what do you call it?
Siding.
The siding or
The switch.
switch, thank you. But theirs is privately owned. It's not a public piece of infrastructure. So that would to me be a lot of benefit of going to Catoosa. But generally what we've talked about a lot is the desire to, you know, ensure that, for one, the costs are covered for the port. And then secondly, I've said, you know, I think it would be ideal if we can structure this such that both parties have a mutual, you know, benefit. We have a mutual interest in growing traffic.
When I'm looking at the agreement here with Wind River, it's page 2, number 5. And it says we'll manage the port facility owned by the Port Authority.
Yes,
Does that mean they're going to
There are-
manage the whole thing? If we get businesses to bring in, they still have,
well, yes, the
Management
way that,
position.
and so we haven't written all of the details of that yet. So yes, we can, what we're getting at is in the beginning, we've got a port, but, you know, we don't have enough traffic that it would justify hiring the kind of staff that actually move trains and stuff like that, you know, so it makes sense for, at least in the beginning, for them to be the operator of the port and managing that flow of traffic, or, you know, even insuring it and so forth. But we do need to give thought to how that's handled as additional business is added. So do they function as the port operator ongoing, or does that evolve? It's the way we have it set up in concept to begin with.
So when you say they'd be operating the track, they'd basically, if you got a fertilizer company out there that needs to bring in 50 cars, the Port Authority or the Wind River Grain would say, we need to have 100 cars in here this date and this date. You need to schedule your cars to come in when our cars aren't here. Is that kind of the way their operation and operating of it would be?
If I understood you correctly, yes, I think so.
They'd be involved in the logistics of
Yeah.
loads in and out,
Yeah,
because we really don't have the capacity to
Right.
do that from the get-go,
right.
I guess.
Well, who's gonna own the train engine? Who owns that?
At this point, Wind River
Wind
would.
River? Move the cars.
Yeah.
So what is part of the railroad? BNSF have just to build the track and they have no say what goes on the track? Or
Well, they
we're
don't.
building the track or?
We're building the track, they're authorizing it as, they're agreeing to serve it. We are designing it in a way that they are willing to interconnect with it and have indicated that they will serve the businesses. As we get into some of the discussions with the tenant, there may be ways, so we as the port are not going to be eligible for their capital improvement fund. They do budget capital improvements within their annual, their business's budget. And I think they extend some of those to the businesses that bring them the most traffic. But we're not going to qualify for that directly. I think that is something that can play into how we negotiate our agreement with Wind River. Again, kind of getting back to that idea that we share some of the benefit of growing traffic. At this point, BNSF has been very reluctant to indicate very much what they're willing to contribute. And again, I don't think it'll be a contribution to us directly. It will be to the company that is actually shipping with them.
Do you have any contact with utilities that might be needed to run this?
I have. So we're in the very corner of Minnescau's territory. I mean, to the road, across the road to the west, across the road to the north. We would be in Midwest Energy, but it is in Minnescau's. And they, let's see what kind of notes I have, but they can serve it. It's really not as daunting as I might have thought out as far as, they would like some more information on the exact expected load to be able to kind of give a more precise estimate, but what are some of my notes there?
So on top of the tip, money that we'll get out of the property taxes, I'm assuming we'll charge them some kind of either a tonnage off the rail or some fee there.
Yeah, I think there could be logically lease fees for the space that they're building on, or per car fees, or a combination thereof, or maybe the more traffic that they build, the less they pay based on lease fees. I don't know how, we have some flexibility. Again, we have kind of a blank slate there. So anyway, I did contact them, but they would have to run, I think they have 3-phase service within about a mile of it to another irrigation engine. So it's not terrible. They'd have to go through a process of, getting right of way likely on the road, the county road.
I think that line that runs right next to the blacktop, they upgraded that to their big 3-phase.
Yeah, to go to Mid-Kansas
Yeah.
Ag, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so there is 3-phase there, which I guess would be a half mile.
Right. As far as sewer water, that's permitted through the county now, and we're not talking about industrial water here, it's really basically bathrooms for the office, so it would be pretty similar to permitting a house.
Yeah. And then as far as
Domestic
getting,
well.
as far as getting the zoning changed, that's just a zoning board decision, as far as that goes, correct?
Yeah, I did talk with Carl about that too. It's currently zoned A2, so he wanted to look at things more carefully to know whether it would need a special use permit or a conditional use permit, but plan for a 45-day process on that.
Yep.
I think it's worth trying. I don't know if this is another long shot, but I think it's worth trying. The Health and Human Services Department that gave us almost $800,000 for the grocery store will presumably have its same application period open beginning. If they follow the pattern they have in past years, it won't be until July that that application period is open, and we know somewhere in the fall. That one, I think, if I were to try to attain funding for that, I would be deliberate in putting it in things that weren't capital improvements, because they can put a notice of federal interest, which is essentially a lien on your property for funding they put toward capital improvements. Don't worry, we got out of it for the there was a period there where I thought, oh gosh, are they going to do this? And then does our banker know? We were successful in making the case that the funding we used was all for labor, not and services. So things like engineering fees and things like that that weren't directly the construction costs in the grocery store, and that relieved us from the requirement of getting a notice of federal interest. And I would try to do the same thing here. Apply it toward, say, the construction admin fees. And another thing is we could consider putting it over a 5-year period. So like the grant at the grocery store is actually a 5-year grant. We captured all of the funding of it in year 1, but we have to report for 5 years. And we could have spent the money over the course of time. So we could also direct it toward operational costs of the port for the first 5 years, and thereby all of the money that we bring in for fees and so forth could go into paying debt. And in my mind, we could maybe partition off a piece of the debt, maybe like the cost of the manor land, and pay that in a 5-year period. And so, well, this is the cash. This is the stuff I gave the commissioners this to look at, and I said, I'm going to take it back because I can tell you it won't be right. It's like that first draft of things, but I'll give it to those of you who haven't seen it already, just to, it's a place to start conceptually of how the operational cash might work in the first 5 years. But what I did in this, and I should have made more copies, if you guys don't remember, but if you were to take HHS grant funding for operational costs of $80,000 a year for 5 years, then you could pay off a $320,000 loan in 5 years and continue in years 5 through 10 without grant funding and have fairly similar cash flow, if that makes sense. it, again, it's indicative, it's not, that's not definitive. Um,
At least it's positive.
Yep,
Did you guys see it?
yep,
You want to look at it again?
I'm good.
Todd?
I'm good.
Okay. Zoning, we've kind of covered that, it's tax increment. You know, if things clicked along like I, want them to, we would know in July whether funding is approved through KDOT. I guess, to me, that would be the logical time to consider,
So on this tax increment finance, that's, the county will still collect their base, right? And then anything above base would go directly towards our TIF district.
right?
Okay,
What we learned through the grocery store is that there actually is a portion of tax that is not, that is exempted from the TIF. So in other words, looking at actual numbers of the grocery store, base of that was right around $2,000 was the base property tax being taken in.
yeah,
And we pay about 46,000 in property taxes now. We don't get 44,000 back. We get like 39,000 back. So there's a portion of it that apparently the state exempted from the TIF, and it goes directly, it goes to the state. I think it's, you may know more about it from having been around the education funding side of things, but I think it's some of the funding that is collected that used to go directly to the schools and now goes to the state and then to the school.
Yeah, the local funds go to the state now.
Yeah, okay, it's that. So
And
you
you
don't
don't get
get
it all back.
100% of it back, even of the increment, but most of it. I think we have to budget about $6,000 that we didn't originally,
Yeah.
know.
yeah, so in that instance, it's like they're taking 12 or 14% right off the top.
However it works, yeah.
So you made no negotiations with Wind River on that lease payment?
No, we have
You
not,
just, I was just wondering how you got to that number, the 75,000.
we have not,
That'd be 2 cents a bushel of storage.
Well, if they're gonna build 3 million bushels of storage, and they turn it 3 times, which I don't know that that'd be possible, it's 0.8 of 1 cent.
Yeah, if they turn it 3 times.
75,000.
Yeah,
So that's why I was asking the
Yeah.
question.
So is that just a number that you kind of pulled out, or is that something that you've heard of?
no, it is a number I put in there because it is at least probably what we need to have to be able to cover logical costs.
Yeah, that,
It
Hopefully
that
we
may not
get-
be the right
Yeah.
number at all.
yeah,
hopefully,
yeah, I would say it could go
when you
up.
build a $6 million facility, you ought to be able to get more than 75,000. I would think that we'd get more than that.
Yeah.
Well, that's what
And-
So that would make the number better.
as volume increased, I assumed you'd get more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just curious.
And, and they're talking, they're right now, they're talking, how much I should be, saying in an open meeting related to their particular businesses, but they are looking at other things themselves besides grain, besides fertilizer. So I think we need to consider that kind of traffic and how we structure the fee structure too.
I mean, I think that's why that'd be really important to be able to visit with the people at Catoosa. Because I mean, I can see where you would charge them so much for just the access to the rail, but then you would have like a per car, per ton rate. You know, the more they use it, the more we generate off of it.
Yeah.
I'm sure it would have to be something like that. But I mean, they're the people that can tell us, you know, what the going rate is.
Yeah.
I don't think it could be a catch-all for every business because like say your fertilizer business, some months out of the year you're gonna be doing next to nothing.
Yeah.
And then as far as grain, you know, you're either, I'd imagine that they're gonna be using it all times of the year.
And it'll also boil down
Do
to
it.
record crops or
Yeah.
drought crops.
Yeah,
Will affect how much goes
Yeah, and
through there.
so I don't think we would want to put it all on per car fees because you want to make sure that you got a minimum, at least to cover your debt.
yeah, I would think for sure a frontage, there would be a frontage fee. Because it sounds like, I mean, they're gonna have quite a bit of frontage with their bunker and unloading deal and then their big facility. I mean, it's gonna take up some space.
But it sounds like Wind River could bring more than just grain.
We could. I don't know. We have to go through all of it. See, they lease land and property, but I think this would be probably the area that is more just shipping stuff through. Okay, so they're a foreign trade zone. We saw that when we went to Garvey Warehouse. I mean, it's not on my list of must-do right away, but it's on my list of things that I think might make sense to go through the process and get the certification. I don't think that it's a lot of outright cost. I think it's the process of the paperwork to,
Yeah.
um,
Carolyn, on a project like this, would the port be involved in any maintenance of, we're gonna have a lot more truck traffic going in and out on the county blacktops. And we may have to pave the mile going straight north to connect all four corners. It's about $1 million a mile to pave a road. What does that look like as far as the port's responsibility for some of that, or is that all in the county? I mean, do you have any, and it may be too early to even say.
Well,
it's just something that
here's my
popped to
take
my
on it.
mind. Yeah,
My take on it would be, we want to do this in a way that fosters collaboration. Obviously, this isn't happening without the county's support of it.
yeah,
I would also kind of draw some parallels to, for example, Golden Belt feeders. I know there's often, tension on the condition of the roads there, and they would like to see more maintenance, but township doesn't get more money because of the traffic that's there, and
Yeah.
it's a dilemma. I think strictly speaking, it's outside of the boundaries of the port,
yeah. I guess we may want to
but
take that into consideration when we're negotiating out our initial contracts, is that we may be looking at having to proper serve our facilities that we're building. We may not be able to rely on the county to take on a ton more. You know, see what I'm saying?
Right, I do,
Um,
I do.
Because it's gonna
Yeah.
be, I would imagine it would be substantially more than what we have now,
Right.
so.
Does the county have like a multi-year plan of its road improvements? Like, do we know that there's a section of road over here that's gonna get addressed next year, and a section of road over here that's gonna get addressed in 2 years, and,
Yeah, we basically overlay a quarter of the county every year, but then I think that Phil puts money away, like that 2 miles of blacktop we would put back in.
By Hudson.
Yeah. So I mean, he probably put money in his capital outlay for years to, you know. So if this does,
It's usually a 5-year plan, I think.
yeah. So I mean, if it does, if we do get a little bit of property taxes off this, and then in 20 years, when the TIF comes off, it'd definitely be a benefit for the county,
Yeah.
so.
yeah. Right. Right.
But is there any, does the Port Authority, you know, if this works out well and we have more businesses come in to where we have a surplus of money, instead of building money up, can the Port Authority, do they have the ability to say,
Yeah,
we
that's
would
kind of where I was
pay
going.
25% of blacktop in this road to the county or something like that?
Yes.
If the money was available?
Yes.
Is that possible?
In fact, I don't think I have a copy of the state statute here.
But we have the authority to do that.
Yeah,
That's kind of what I was hinting towards, is that we need to keep that in mind
yeah,
to make sure we have enough money, because it's gonna be a lot of maintenance, so.
yeah. I'm just sure, I don't have the statute here, but I'm just sure that in the statute it stipulates that if there's a surplus, that the port may remit it back to the county.
Okay. With the understanding that we build a road and not buy more fire trucks.
Some of the things that have crossed my mind is that, you know, if we knew in July that we were funded and we're ready to move forward, you know, we're probably gonna need some stuff like a construction loan. We don't have any cash to, some of these things are on reimbursement basis, you know, in terms of grants. So, we would have to, I think, be prepared to pay the bill and then get reimbursed. I don't think we kind of hit on this already. Process for building permits such as a septic system and domestic well, I don't think are going to be complex for what is really almost the equivalent of a house for offices. It would maybe be different if it were a different business, but for this, I don't think it
I
would
would
be.
think that would be Winfield Grain's responsibility for
Well,
their water and their
that's probably
septic
true.
system. They would actually be the ones applying for those permits.
Point taken. I've asked ASM, I put this in August, I asked what would be what would be a time frame that we would expect if you knew that if we were funded, and the bid process would take 6 to 8 weeks, and the rail construction about 5 months. It sounds like they can do a lot of that even through the winter. Expecting some delays, but they don't have to avoid January altogether or something like that.
If we do buy the ground and do the construction, what can we do with the interior of that circle? Or will that be where Scott can just shorten the pivot, continue
You
farming?
can shorten the pivot and continue farming.
So then we would get the income off that.
Yeah.
Carolyn, I
he's
didn't,
interested in doing that. We talked about, in fact, it's in the purchase option that our intent is there to allow him to continue farming as long as it's practical. Although I've also, tried to be very clear that our purpose for purchasing land, if we do so, is for port development. We're happy to have agriculture production continue alongside it as it can, but if there is a conflict for some reason, the railroad track traverses where they've got the water well drilled, and we can't, we're not necessarily going to guarantee that we're moving the irrigation well to accommodate farming because our rail service interrupted it. Our fundamental purpose is in the transload facility. But if we can continue farming it in the meantime, we're happy to do that, is the nature of the conversation I've had with him.
I haven't read this option to purchase, word for word, but I do see here that we're getting the surface and the water rights, this 20787. Is there anything in here about the mineral rights, or is K-State Foundation retaining mineral interest ownership?
Thought we got mineral rights.
I didn't read it, like I said, word for word. I just kind of scanned over it real quick.
My belief is that we have the mineral rights. Oh, goodness. I don't even see what
If they're not listed out, that usually means you have.
Yeah, that's what I was getting ready to say. If it's not specifically,
And I don't.
Said
see
that they're
listed out,
excluded.
So
yeah.
Is a lease payment on mineral rights an annual payment or a one-time payment at the signing of the lease?
A one-time payment at the signing of the lease. The current lease on the property, there is an option for extension. That would be about 2.5 years from now. It could be extended for another payment, but most likely would not be extended. I would say if it's not, generally speaking, if it's not, like Justin's saying, if it's not excluded. But I just saw some specific language referring directly to the water rights and the water permit number, so.
Do you have a time designated to sit down with Wind River and further develop that?
We don't have it, no. You're welcome to be a part of that.
Oh, I was just wondering.
Well, it
'Cause
is
that's gonna be a big part of whether this thing works or not.
Yeah.
So,
as far as the operation, is there a time period for that, or is it along with the, because it's a 50-year term, right? But is the operating separate somewhere in here?
We don't have either one of those binding agreements developed. They would be, we did treat them in the letter of intent as two separate agreements.
Okay.
A lease agreement and an operating agreement. Yeah, okay. You know, well, some of my discussions with Alex were even too, like, if the full water right isn't needed, that there may be options to monetize parts of that, you know, either leasing it or, my personal take on selling it is that it may be very valuable to have that water right over time. If, you know, this probably isn't the business that would come in, but say an ethanol plant did come like, you know, Conestoga did in Garden City. You need water for that, you know. I mean, I don't think that's feasible here, but there are plenty of businesses that do need water, and by having that, I think that's, the city of St. John doesn't have,
Yeah.
A, that much excess capacity, and B, the cost of connecting with their city sewer system would be prohibitive, most likely.
It's a little
So-
more valuable of a water right, isn't it? Being in the 2-mile corridor, as far as being able to transfer out and not, you know, Justin, you don't take a hit, correct?
Yeah.
If you transfer
well,
out of the 2-mile corridor?
Right, you won't take as big a hit and,
Yeah, so if you were to monetize some of it, I would think that it would be as valuable as it gets.
yeah. But I think you're also right, you gotta keep water, at least some, because you don't know what
Yeah.
business may come in, so.
Yeah.
But I don't know how much that sun is.
Right. So
That's the thing.
is lease the way that gives you some ability to monetize what you don't necessarily need in the short term, but not give up options in the long term?
Right.
Well, for the short term, a little, you know, it looks like it's only gonna affect maybe the outside 2, depending on how big their bunker and stuff is inside. You could still have a 4 or 5 tower,
Right.
circle
I
Look
think
like
that's
and just continue farming the inside of it.
the only thing I worry about a little bit is that if you look on the quarter, the well is over there on the corner. The track might go over where the well actually is. So, we'll see. It may disrupt it for that reason, not because,
Yeah.
Moving the well would run about 18,000.
I haven't priced it. You would know more than I do.
You'd run around 18,000.
So, yeah, one might say, in the scope of the cost of the project, it's a cost that can be absorbed. I guess we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Might miss it.
What?
They might miss it.
Put a
And
truss
it
on
might,
it.
you're right.
Bridget.
I guess I haven't paid attention, I don't know where it is.
It's on the northeast corner.
Northeast?
It looks to me,
It might, yeah, it might miss it.
It also looks like they might be gonna tear out some of that tree belt,
Yes,
along the road.
it is part of the plan. You're right.
Or, yeah, maybe all of it. I see they have this gas line marked. Is that gonna be an issue with building a rail over, directly over that big lumen line? On the wider.
quarter,
Yeah,
pentagram.
I think that's a big line, isn't it?
I'm not sure. I think that's the line that goes over there that feeds St. John.
Yeah.
right off 281. But I don't know how big of a line that is, whether it's like 8 inch or 10
Yeah.
inch.
I mean, surely they go across quite a few
They're all
lines.
big if you hit them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's a big one.
Yeah.
There's bigger ones in the area. But, I mean, seriously, the ones that are right along 281 are the big ones. But I don't know if I can directly answer your
Yeah.
question. I think that,
I would think they cross gas lines all the time with rail.
Well, you know they do.
Yeah,
Just gotta put it deeper.
yeah.
So is there anything else we need to get done in this meeting? I mean, are you want to
So-
elect officers and design financial year or
yeah,
designate?
yeah. So all of these are things we need to take care of. Now, I think electing officers is probably something we definitely need to do tonight. Designating fiscal year is just pretty, we've almost already decided that just by the nature of where the terms begin and end with, the county's appointments, really. So our fiscal year, logically, I think needs to be February 1 to January 31, because that follows what the appointment of terms are. Like the commissioners' appointed terms that begin February, when they begin, I guess in this case, they began January 27th, because that's when you met and immediately appointed them. But the terms expire on the 31st of January, so a new term would begin on the beginning of February. And that was chosen because it fit with when new commissioners are installed and would ensure that they had the opportunity to make an appointment if an opening arises. So I think logically our fiscal year is February 1 to January 31. But I don't know, I mean, if you want to say something about that, we can reconsider it or whatever, but I think that one's pretty straightforward. The bylaws do stipulate that a banking institution is designated. So that's something we can do. And then I don't know if you want to take, I mean, there's a lot of paper here. And I actually didn't put in the two versions of the plan for future development because I thought I might hand them out separate, kind of separately, because one is drafted different than another one. Like one of them specifically excludes eminent domain language. That's the way Clint Patty, the attorney that we worked with 6 years ago, wrote it, because that's what the state statute does allow for. I kind of said, I think there's people here that hear eminent domain and get very nervous. They think that that's the motivation for doing this. And at least from my perspective, it's not. We're very much trying to approach this with landowners who are, by their own choice, selling land. And we're trying to be very, I don't know, even in the way we're financing it. We're not jumping to the authority that could be there to have this be a taxing authority. So do we need to put, specifically in the plan for development that eminent domain is possible? He drafted it again without that language in there. So there's two versions of this plan for development. I don't know if you want to take some time to read these more thoroughly and then consider our next meeting, the point that we do the actual, adoption of those. If you have, comments on particular provisions you want to edit or whatever, that would give us some time to incorporate those kinds of thoughts. I don't know how you feel about that.
I would personally like some time because I feel like I'm kind of behind.
Yep. I
I
definitely
think the
don't.
three commissioners
Not
probably
read them yet.
Yeah,
are so far ahead of the rest of us, maybe, I don't know, maybe.
I definitely
Julie
don't
or
want this
Chad
to be
knows,
something where
but,
people feel like it's a
uh,
rubber stamp. It's not. I mean,
Yeah.
even just like the idea that there's a lot left to do on the lease agreements. You can, I welcome the involvement of others, you know. We've, I think, just kind of tried to work
You've
through
done
things
all
in a
the,
practical way, you know, and we had funding to be able to move forward, but not an organization to accept it. So we've kind of had to work with an agent, I guess, a fiscal agent, but
and that's
the
what I was
intent
going to ask
is
you.
for the board to
Have
be an active board.
you run this money and these funds through economic development
Yes,
to pay everything?
yes,
And that is banked through,
SJN.
okay,
And we do have our checking account at SJN.
okay. Well, that's,
So do you want to start marking these off the list?
Sure.
As far as the fiscal year, I mean, I'm good with going February 1st to January 31st. Is everybody else?
Yep. I'm
yeah, I
good
don't
with
see a problem with that.
that. I think that makes the most sense.
Who's keeping minutes?
We haven't elected any officers.
We've done a lot of talking, and I haven't been necessarily writing minutes on what we're doing.
I got a few notes here.
We haven't taken any action. so-
Yeah. I mean, you basically caught us up and kind of told us what was going on.
Okay.
I think the bank, I mean, since the money's already there, that's,
Yeah, I just instead of
that's
SJN.
That would be my preference too.
Okay.
what offices, elected offices is that?
Yeah, the chair, vice chair, treasurer, and secretary. According to the bylaws.
What page is that on? You writing those offices?
It's in tab 4 still,
Tab
on,
four?
it starts on page 5, I believe.
Yeah.
It's behind what colored tab?
Blue tab.
Blue
Yeah,
tab.
I know.
Blue tab,
count
page
them?
5.
It says the chair, vice chair, secretary, and treasurer.
Is there a formal motion on the resolution setting fiscal year?
Yes, I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Second?
Did you find
Yeah.
that? Oh, there's
Yeah.
mine.
Page 5.
Should we vote?
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
I make a motion that we designate SJM Bank of Kansas for our banking institution for the Port Authority.
Second.
We got a motion and a second to make SJM Bank of Kansas the banking institution for the Port Authority. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried.
So what's your feelings on the, who should be chair, Chad?
Well, the commissioners definitely know more than the rest of us. Well, how do the commissioners feel about being the chair on this?
Me personally, I would think where Carolyn is the one that's talking with everybody, that, you know, in some of the documents, it'll just be the chairman that'll have to sign. I wouldn't be opposed to have Carolyn be the chair.
That'd be a good choice, if she wants to do it.
Another hat.
I have a flexible employer right now that's allowing me the time to do it, so.
I mean, what's everybody else think?
Yeah, I'm okay
I
with
mean,
that. I mean, there's some logistics as far as you signing things, and, I mean, as the chair, you can do some of that stuff to where one of us wouldn't have to come in and sign things or, you know, do administrative process like that. I'm okay with it.
I'm also, I mean, I'm glad to fill the role. And maybe this is something that makes sense to also kind of more fully consider when we adopt the bylaws, but I think there also, as we think about the roles of people, needs to be some consideration of how this operates on an ongoing basis, like years down the road, who is the staff person for this? I think it's fair to say that the Economic Development Group is happy to extend my time to getting this started, but probably doesn't feel like it is the core of the Economic Development's mission to do that on an ongoing basis. Not the least of which is they probably don't have the finances to do so over the long haul, you know? So it may be that this role transitions, you know, like, I don't know, that if I'm spending my time day to day doing it for under the auspices of economic development, that may not, I'm just saying it may not be the long term.
So if the Port Authority got to where they were being able to run in the black and actually make a little bit of money, are you saying that you don't have the time to do both, or that if the Port Authority was able and they were able to pay 25 or a certain percentage of your salary, then you would feel all right working for Port Authority and not economic development paying your salary, and you're doing 25% of your time with Port Authority?
Yeah. Well,
I perceive this, once you get up and going, I perceive this as being someone with a paid position of going out and recruiting businesses and services and stuff. It'd be a full-time job, is what I perceive.
I can see how that,
Yeah.
Looking forward, once the grain facility and the rock, the fertilizer and
Mhm.
Yep.
I think Carolyn's job, once this is built, is to go find the next mission.
Yep.
I
Yeah.
agree with that. That's part of the reason I asked about the question about Wind River and looking over or administrating the Port Authority. I mean, is that something that they are going to have the control of, or like you said, we are going to have a person that we put in place to go to these businesses, or is Wind River the one that's
Yeah.
going to be going out there and grabbing the new businesses? That's a question I have.
right. And how does the port get compensated for the traffic that, say, they grow versus a person that is directly employed by the organization? Yeah,
Good growth.
yeah.
So back to, are you willing to serve as chair?
Is this are these appointments just a year deal at the end of every year, or are they?
I believe so, I think.
It doesn't say.
Because it's a 4-year commitment, I ain't volunteering for nothing.
I second Todd.
Oh.
It says February of each year by more majority vote. Section 2 on top of page 5.
Yeah.
Usually it's a year-to-year thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so,
that's what I was
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Do you want one of the commissioners to be a vice chair or one of their appointees? What's the best way to? It really makes no difference to me. I know I'm not very good at taking minutes, so I really don't want to be
You're the only one that's taking them tonight.
not very good at that, so.
I did really good, I forgot my pen, so.
Can solve that.
Oh, that's okay.
Well, my suggestion would be that Chad become the treasurer and Julie become the secretary and Bryce the vice chair.
I second that.
I'm not asked about my record-keeping abilities.
We have a motion and a second.
That was just my suggestion.
Was that a motion, Clay?
Yeah,
I think that sounds like a good idea.
I think that's a motion.
Yeah.
All right.
You know, for your chair, where me and Justin live a long ways away from town, if we needed to drive in and sign a check or something like that, I mean, where Bryce is
Yeah, I can do
close.
that. I'm okay with that, as long as you two are okay.
Yep.
Bill?
You okay with that, Julie?
Not really. I mean, I'm okay with Bryce. I just don't know my minutes, because I'm like, oh, he's gonna type those, and then 2 weeks later, it's out the door, so.
I would second that.
It's
That's a
been,
motion.
the motion been made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Okay, so we need to digest the bylaws between now and the next meeting.
Madam Chair, what are you thinking for the next meeting? 2 weeks for us to go through bylaws
Yeah.
and the future development plan, and just keep this thing rolling?
What kind of schedule works for you guys? I heard one today express a preference for not evening meetings going forward. I don't know,
I'm
but
fine at 5 AM.
I do have a board that meets at 7, and I don't know very many others that, that do that, but
You will be taking notes at 5 a.m.
I find I have a hard time with Farm Bureau Board doing that too.
At this time of year, anything works good for me.
Yeah.
But I mean, once we get into the farming season, it might be a little more hard.
I like mornings myself.
That would be good.
I can fit pretty much anything in.
I'm flexible.
Yep.
okay. Particular day of the week?
On mornings, whatever, except unless it can't be on a Wednesday.
Morning's good for you?
So is something like an 8:30 like the commission meets, is that a good,
Yeah, that's fine.
okay? I mean, Monday,
Monday, Tuesday?
And Monday and Tuesdays are good for me.
Tuesday the 16th is two weeks in a day.
That would be fine with me.
Okay. 16th at 8:30.
So, yeah,
As far as those bylaws, I mean, we need to read them and think about it. I'm not a big fan of that eminent domain, but I can also see where 15 years down the line, if this thing grows, you kind of hate to just say you absolutely will not do it. If
Because what if you need it?
Yeah, what
Yeah, if you need it for the
I
greater
hear what you're
good.
saying. I could also make the case that this law is there. It will always be there. We just plan to, publish a different plan if circumstances change.
Yeah.
I could,
I think in our plan, it's pretty clear, our published plan, it's pretty clear what we're doing, what land we're acquiring, where we're gonna build it. So I think that it should be fairly well received from the public as far as us not using eminent domain now.
Right.
But I'm like, you guys are saying, I'd hate to back ourselves into a corner. In 15 years, you need another one of those quarters to expand out on, and dealing with a foundation or an heir of a foundation, and you might not be able to do it without it.
I think the one at Garden City's now is sitting on 800 acres
Yeah,
or something. I mean, it's just amazing what they've done out there.
yep.
And I don't know that that will happen in Stafford County, Kansas. Garden City's a little different situation, but
Yeah.
who knows, it might.
I have to be much smaller, the 16th at 11:30.
Okay.
But that's a courthouse.
So what time you gonna have to leave, by 9?
Probably 9:30, 9:45. So I mean, if it's just bylaws and whatever,
I like having just a time frame.
Yeah.
Can't run too long. Whatever days works fine for me.
I hate to push it, but that's one of those not negotiable.
I understand.
Which I have very few of.
I'm gonna be gone the following week,
Do it on Monday,
Let's
so
do Monday then.
Monday would be fine with me.
The
the 15th.
15th.
And will you send us out a reminder?
Yeah, and I will try to have materials. I try to have board material, like Economic Development Board meets on Tuesday. I try to always have the board materials to them on Friday so that they have time to review them before Tuesday meeting. I ran out of time on Friday and didn't get it done. So I have more time to prepare for this one, and I will pledge to get that done. So that you'll have board meeting materials by Friday for the 12th for our Monday meeting.
So our
But
next.
I also don't think there's as much stuff to throw at you in terms of like paper to review and things like that as there was for this one.
So we'll adopt bylaws at this coming meeting. On the adopt plan for future development, we'll do that next meeting.
We need to do that next meeting. And
Is that just kind of a broad base, this is what we'd like this to?
it can be general, you can be specific. I think that John really took from what that general plan was that was drafted. I mean, we had a hearing on it back in 2000, whatever that was, 14 or 15.
Did anybody show up?
Yeah, some people showed up. So, we'll have to go through the same process. It's not just that we're adopting it for our own records. I mean, it will become the thing that we have to publish, receive public comment on, have a hearing before we final adoption of it. So I guess maybe it's not even, I may not even be using the correct legal term to say we're going to adopt it next meeting, but we would be agreeing to
Publish.
publish it.
So, did you say you weren't comfortable with giving those out? So do we need to make time to get with you between now and the 15th? Or is that something you can email to us and we can read through?
Are you talking about the bylaws?
I'm talking
No.
about
The plan, no, it's the print, I have it, it should be in the email that was sent just this afternoon.
Okay.
I know, it was just this
Okay.
afternoon. But you should have one that has eminent domain and one that does not.
okay.
I printed them off, and then I was gonna put them in the binder, and I thought, this is gonna be confusing, they look the same on the first page, you're not gonna easily know which one's which, maybe I'll just hand them out directly, and then I haven't handed them out.
I
but,
scanned through, but I didn't go through everything that was on the email. So those two things for the agenda, and then will you have new developments by?
It's on my list of what we need to do. We have officers. Fiscal year. So it does say in the bylaws as they're drafted that the port shall annually prepare a budget. So if we went by that, we would need to adopt a budget. I kind of don't even know what to exactly put at this time because there's a lot of plans that are contingent on things. I guess another way that we could look at it is that there might be three things in the bylaws that we could consider making at the discretion of the board, or keeping it the way that it says. One, you could say may may prepare or shall prepare as appropriate, or may at the board's discretion shall prepare, or something like that, give you some flexibility. The other one would be in an audit. So we actually went through this with economic development. As the attorneys drafted the bylaws, it was a requirement, and there was some discussion among the board members at that time, whether it was necessary to do an audit or not. And in the end, for what it's worth, economic development put the word may in there, because it locks you into about a $5,000 or $6,000 expense to do the audit. And if you don't have a whole lot of financial activity in the beginning, there might be some benefit to having some flexibility on that. Now, as our organization has gotten more sophisticated, we do an audit every year, and it's been beneficial for being able to show different grant sources how, I don't know, it conveys some confidence to those grant sources that we're doing things correctly. And so, similarly, I don't think it's a bad idea. It's just that I'm aware that it locks you into about a $5,000 or $6,000 expense from the get-go if you commit to that. And then the third one, and this was actually discussed with the first port board, was the requirement to acquire insurance. And in that case, they did also put the flexibility to change the word shall to may. Because in the beginning, we didn't have a bank account, we didn't have any property to insure, and does it make sense to obligate yourself to that expense before you even have the things to insure? So those might be three things to give some thought to.
The bylaws, were these drawn by Stoll or his attorney? Is that where you got these?
They were, really, I think it's fair to say that they were drafted by Clint Patty and that law firm.
In
Three-
person,
uh,
within person,
Topeka.
people.
So now John took them and reviewed them, maybe made some edits, but really the authorship would go more to Clint Patty at Frieden something. He's no longer at that firm.
Okay.
So I didn't,
But they have been reviewed by the attorney that you've been currently using?
yes.
So you'll email an agenda out then?
Yeah, agenda, so, so I guess on the thing that, besides the bylaws, the plan, the other things I'm aware of on this checklist of things we need to do, budget, liability insurance, and assignment of option contracts. So I think more of this rests on the Economic Development Board, because, in a sense, they own the contract, but it also involves the Port Authority needs to discuss and vote on accepting an assignment, and at the next EcoDepot board meeting, the board should approve assignment of option contracts to the Port Authority. So I'll put that on the Economic Development agenda, but it should also be on this board's agenda to accept.
Will they meet before we do?
They will, they'll meet next week. So that's what, I think if we got those things, that would be progress.
The acceptance, the assignment would be next, like after they approved.
Yeah,
Okay. Anything else for tonight?
Maybe by then they'll hear from the Port of Catoosa.
yeah. That, yeah. Okay, if we were to do something like that, is there any particular time frame, excuse me, that works better or something to avoid if we were to consider? And I don't know, some of the logistics that we also need to consider is it's good 4 hours there, I think. So I don't know if that's a one-day trip or a go down the afternoon, evening before, and then have your tour in the morning and drive back.
I would say a one-day trip would be
I
fine.
was gonna say, I think it's just a get up early trip to go.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Ought to be down there before noon and be headed back by 2 or 3.
Okay. I can plan. Is there, maybe to approach it this way, are there any dates that would definitely not work for people?
The 13th and 16th of February is the only thing I'm committed to.
You're gonna be gone
Yeah.
that last week of February?
Yeah, I'm gonna be gone the 20th through the 21st, or the 20th through the 27th of February.
20 to 27 of February?
Yeah.
Okay. The 18th of February is not good for me, but that's coming right up. Well, so no, 18th is one that I could mark off.
Anytime in March would work for me except for the 5th and, the 5th and 6th of March. It'd be nice if we could get it sometime in March before we start planting corn.
That would be my preference, by about the 20th of March to be done with it.
Okay. Okay.
And if they say no, you'll contact the Wind River.
Yeah,
I mean, that would,
right.
It would be nice if they don't want to give us a tour, if we could at least have a phone conversation as far as how they determine on leases and stuff like
That's a
that.
good idea too.
yeah.
I mean, otherwise we won't, even if we go out to Wind River and see their facility, I mean, we won't have any idea of how that's done.
Okay. So I'll email you an agenda, but I'm not really thinking that there's any other necessarily documents that I need to send to you to review. You've got 2 different drafts of the plan for development, and you've got a draft of bylaws,
Okay.
so. I like meeting here just because this is my take, I like being able to spread out far enough that we don't have to worry about masks and still feel like we're, I don't know, taking the precautions that are appropriate right now.
Good with that?
Good with that, so,
If there's nothing else,
yeah.
move to adjourn.
Okay, all right. Motion carries, I think. All in favor? Leave.
You want these back?